Fiction authors are told all the time, cut your prologue, readers hate them. But is that actually true? Or is it one of the biggest myths in publishing? Today, I'm going to show you the secret history behind where this advice comes from, what it means, and why readers don't really hate prologues at all. But there are some caveats.
Hi there. Do you have a great idea for a fiction story? A story you're dying to bring to the world, but you don't know where you're going with it, don't know how to fill out a compelling plot, and have a hard time sitting down to even write words, much less finish your story? Even when you do write, do you worry that it's boring, that it drags, and that readers are going to hate it? So you stay stuck, write and rewrite the same scenes, and eventually give up, ending up with a file of half-written manuscripts and glorious story ideas on your computer. Hi, my name is Liesl, USA Today best-selling author and writer of 4 genres, and I've been writing fiction for more than 15 years. I teach fiction authors to write highly emotional stories based on elements of psychology and spirituality, with an emphasis on your unique subconscious creativity. Did you know that human beings cannot be emotionally healthy without stories? That we'd all literally go mad if we couldn't tell ourselves stories and derive meaning from them? It's true, and a scientifically proven fact. So, grab your chocolate of choice and your fuzzy slippers. Let's turn that story snippet knocking around in your brain into a full-length novel that will give your reader that emotionally cathartic experience they long for, make you money, and change the world. Who's with me?
So let me ask you this. Do you feel conflicted about prologues? Like maybe you want to include a prologue in your book, but you're not sure if you should. Maybe you like prologues, but you've heard that readers hate them. Or maybe it's the opposite. You hate prologues, but you see that a lot of authors use them, so you wonder if you should. The idea of readers hating prologues is publishing wisdom. And for those listening on the podcast, I'm using air quotes when I say that. I'm being a little bit sarcastic. But this publishing wisdom has been floating around the fiction author space for literally decades. I've been asked about it a lot by authors lately. Should I write a prologue? Like, what is the best practice? How do I know if a prologue is right for my book? And every single person who asks me that points out that they always hear that readers hate prologues. So I started thinking about this in a lot of detail because my experience of it is that I've literally never had a reader say that to me. Now, I haven't put prologues on all of my books, but I've written a few. And much like all of you, I do hear this, wisdom a lot that readers hate prologues. But I had to wonder, is it really true? I decided I needed to do some research just to make sure I knew what I was talking about. I had my suspicions about what the truth was. And as it turns out, I was right. So here's the thing. Back in the era of traditional publishing, before the rise of Amazon and the digital revolution, prologues started to get a bad rap because they were often misused. Authors would use them to info dump, give world-building lectures, or write teasers that really weren't all that connected to the story if they were connected at all. So agents and book publishers and editors who, remember, were drowning in slush piles, always dreaded prologues because they knew that most of the time that meant they were going to have to wade through this terribly written stuff before they could even get to chapter 1. So that frustration on their part, which is understandable, and the advice they gave because of it, morphed into this blanket writing advice that said, cut the prologue, start with chapter 1. And over time, that morphed into readers hate prologues. And this advice was circulated so much and so often through the fiction world that it became common wisdom, even though it's really not universally true. So the question is, how should you decide whether you need to write a prologue for your book or not? The first thing you need to be aware of is that it does depend on your genre. For certain genres, just because of the nature of the stories told in that genre, a prologue can feel like a barrier between the reader and getting to the actual story. So in those genres, you're more likely to have readers say, I hate prologues. But in other thrillers, usually the ones that are a little more commercially driven, readers can often expect them and even look forward to them. So the blanket advice of readers hate prologues really only applies to select audiences. So the first thing you need to do is look at what your genre is that you're writing and decide whether a prologue would be appropriate for your genre. Now, you may ask what genres like prologues, which ones don't. I'm not going to go into that in this video, but the next video that I'm doing after this, I've put together for exactly that purpose. I'm going to do a breakdown of genres, types of prologues, and what goes best where. So stay tuned for that second video. And you know what? While you're at it, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you are alerted when that video goes live, okay? But again, genre is key. If you decide that you do need a prologue and that it would be appropriate for your genre, then you need to make sure to stay away from the pitfalls that made prologues pariahs in the first place, okay? Remember, a lot of authors use them as crutches. They dump backstory and sometimes even lore or mythology into them rather than weaving that stuff through the story. They start with an action scene that doesn't come up again for another 200 pages or however long. But the biggest problem there too is that out of context, action can lack emotion. So it just doesn't excite the reader. They're not invested in it, and that's going to be a problem. And finally, they can give away too much backstory or have too much of a teaser so that it becomes tiring because the reader just wants to get into the main story. So just don't do any of those things. When readers do complain about prologues, they're not complaining about the prologue itself, they're complaining about badly written prologues, and that makes it take longer for them to get into the good part of the story. We don't want that. Think of your prologue as a movie trailer or a sneak peek. When well done, they make you need to see that film or TV show. You just have to find out what happens. Makes you so excited to dive into the rest of the story, right? Just think for a minute about your favorite movie or series or even book that had a really great teaser or lead-in or trailer and you just were jumping out of your skin to get the rest of that story. That's what you want your prologue to be like. So prologues themselves aren't bad, only the poorly written ones are. And it's worth remembering that we are no longer in the traditional publishing era. We are in the era of the digital revolution and Amazon and all the other online retailers. We have things that they didn't have in the traditional publishing era. We have look inside previews. We have the binge reading culture of KU. We have a lot more clarity about what readers of different genres and even very niche genres are looking for. We can make use of those things even in our prologues. And most authors didn't have that during the traditional publishing era. They only had the big, wide genres to deal with, like thriller, mystery, fantasy, but we can go so much deeper than that when it comes to genre and tropes these days. So what I'm saying is that if a prologue is really well written, if it hooks your reader, if it is a great intro into the story, it can actually help sell your story, okay? So you need to make sure that a prologue is appropriate for your genre, and then you need to make sure that it's well written enough that it really sells the audience on the rest of the story. If you do those two things, the prologue can actually be an asset to you rather than a hindrance. So quick recap, the readers hate prologues advice comes originally from Tribe Publishing, from publishing agents and editors and book publishers who were frustrated because the majority of prologues they got were badly written. And today, that same belief is also pushed by the genres that don't really like prologues. But there are many other genres that do like prologues and often expect them. And when prologues are well written rather than poorly written, they can actually help you get the audience into your book and sell your book to them and keep them turning pages. So it can become an asset to you rather than a hindrance, okay? So obviously the next big question then is, how do I make sure that I'm writing an effective prologue that readers are going to receive very well? First of all, we need to recognize that there is more than one type of prologue. And again, the next video that I do, I'm going to break down in great detail the types of prologues and the genres that they go with, okay? So stay tuned for that. Once again, if you're not subscribed or don't have notifications coming to you, make sure those are turned on so you don't miss it. But what I'm going to tell you here is going to be universal attributes for any prologue. The number one is that it needs to be well written. And by that, I mean anything that goes for the main part of your book in terms of being well written also applies to the prologue, right? We're talking syntax, word choice, sentence structure, make sure the grammar is right, make sure there's no typos, make sure the writing voice is coming through, make sure that they're very grounded in the POV of whatever character you are using. All of the things that are true of your main book need to be true of your prologue as well. Your prologue is not a freebie to do whatever you want and not practice great writing, right? So that's number one. It needs to be well written. Number two, it needs to be emotional. I'm going to die on this hill, you guys. Emotion is what hooks a reader, okay? It's not action. Believe it or not, it's not even romance or sex. It is always emotion. So it is possible, not very probable, but possible to write a romance scene that doesn't hook a reader because it's boring and doesn't evoke any emotion. Action is the same way. If you drop a reader into the middle of an action scene and they have no context and they don't care very much about the characters that are taking part in the action, it's not going to hook them. So whatever is happening in your prologue needs to hook the reader, and you're going to do that by evoking emotion, same as in your normal book, okay? And number 3, your prologue needs to be intriguing. And I think that this is probably the number one thing that most authors are missing. Authors tend to make the mistake of thinking that a prologue is just backstory or just something, relevant or semi-relevant that happens before chapter 1, or again, that it's like a sneak peek into the climactic moment. And while it can be any of those things, they can all be true, it needs to go a little bit deeper than that. It needs to be more than that. It needs to be something that will intrigue the reader. Not just, I'll just show them the past where this happened. No. It needs to be something that really intrigues them and makes them want to keep reading. In fact, I like to think of the prologue as being something intriguing, but without the context. So the number one reaction that you want to invoke from your reader through your prologue is for them to say, I have no idea what's going on there, but man, I got to find out. Give me the rest of that book right now. That is what a prologue should do for your reader. If it's not doing that, it's not doing its job. Okay, so again, we need to make sure that your prologue is well written, that it's highly emotional, and that it is highly intriguing for the reader, but in a lot of ways without the context. We want them to say, I have no idea what's going on there, but I gotta know. Give me the rest of that story, okay? And finally, as we wrap up here, if you want more support writing your story, if you want a great community, accountability, and tons of help getting your story written, please check out the Legendary Fiction Forge. We are a community of writers who are working toward getting our books published and supporting each other, making sure that everybody gets what they need and nobody feels stuck for very long. Check out the link in the caption to learn more, and we hope to see you inside. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I hope that this information on prologues was helpful and that it helps you to not be afraid to write prologues, but also to be vigilant to make sure that when you write them, you are writing them well and using them to serve your reader. Again, look for the next video where I'm going to break down prologues by genre and type so that you know what might be best for your book. See you then.
Thanks for listening today. If this episode helped or inspired you in any way, would you do me a solid and leave me a review? Reviews help other fiction authors find the podcast. You could also recommend it to a writer friend of yours so they can get the same inspiration you got. Remember, you have a story inside you that only you can tell. So get out there and write your soul story, because your readers are waiting for it with bated breath.